Hi, my name is Brooke Jenkins. I am the San Francisco District Attorney, and you are watching The Pulse.
The Pulse.
I actually needed something.
I do need my glasses.
Action.
My name is Rhashiyd Zinnamon, host of The Pulse here at San Quentin, and I have Brooke Jenkins as my guest today. How are you this morning?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I am nervous, but I'm good. So how was your journey inside? Let's talk about that, coming into the institution.
You know, it always wakes you up when you walk into an institution like this. You have to really think about what it means for those that live in here. So that's the feeling I have every time that Sally Port door closes behind me.
Wow. Okay, so your first visit here was the 23rd, I think, of September?
No, actually, I'd been here before, about 5 years ago, for a different symposium.
Really? Before you were big wig, huh?
Yes, I was an assistant DA
Wow.
back then, and you guys brought in prosecutors from all over the Bay Area,
Right.
and so I was one of a few that had signed up to come from San Francisco DA's office.
So that opens up the door for my first question. So between that first visit and the last time you were here, had your perception changed anything about the incarcerated or what goes on here?
I wouldn't say anything changed. I've always felt that we have an obligation to try to make sure that things that go on inside are what they should be. And so I felt that then. I met a lot of men during that first trip here, that first visit here, that clearly had reformed themselves, and I had the same experience when I came in September.
That's a beautiful thing. Like, I think, speaking for the incarcerated, I think that's one of the things we want most is people in those positions to see that change, right? Because a lot of people have this preconceived notion that prison is fun or that we're just here and we're doing nothing, right? And so, like, we really try to break that stereotype down here, and at the same time give people a glimpse into what the lives are like inside once the gavel bangs and once we leave the courtroom, you know? And so I think moving forward, my second question would be, how do you and your office plan to deal with people when it comes to the resentencing, Penal Code 1170? Are there specific things you're looking for? And what might disqualify someone or kind of put them on the back burner?
Yeah, so of course the resentencing work is something that we are continuing to do. It's something that we're invested in as well. The main thing that I look for, and I know that the team looks for, but they certainly bring to me those who they believe should get the benefit of resentencing, is what have they been doing inside? Have people really worked on themselves? Have they been programming? Do they have insight about sort of what got them into the situation that took them into prison, and do they seem prepared to come back out again? Right. And so that's the main thing that I know stands out to us. There certainly are some exclusions. Most of that is charge related. It's very specific types of murder per se, or sex crimes. Not all murders, but certain characteristics inherent in a murder. So there are certain exclusionary charges or categories of crimes. But other than that, we're just looking at sort of where the person is at now and what they've been doing while they've been inside. Okay.
I'm sure people will be glad to hear that. Like, many of the men I've interviewed here have this, you've been vilified. I'll just put it, bluntly, but I think it's because they have this preconceived notion that for the disenfranchised or the marginalized people or underprivileged people, that your office is kind of gearing towards prosecuting these people more so than other ethnicities. How would you respond to that?
So, I mean, my main response would be that it makes no sense that I would want to incarcerate my own people. One, I was raised by my black mother, but I am half El Salvadorian, so I'm black and brown. Raised by a single mom, come from very little.
Right.
So there would be no reason for me to want to target my own people. Certainly people who have had to struggle the way that I watched my mom struggle to try to raise me. The main thing that I want is for our system to be fair. So when I first became a prosecutor, of course I had a choice. If I wanted to do criminal law, would I do defense? Would I do prosecution? Thought I wanted to be a prosecutor, but I ended up actually volunteering at the public defender's office first on a murder case. And felt like I gave all of myself to that trial. We ended up losing, but gave everything I had to defending our client, but felt that I wanted to be a prosecutor in large part because I wanted to make sure we had representation on our side, on that side. I wanted to make sure that when people came through the system, that when they saw the government, that they could believe I'll be treated fairly regardless of what I look like or where I come from. And so when I walked through the door to be a prosecutor, I said I'll only do this job one way, and it's the way that I believe it fairly should be done. The moment that somebody tries to infringe on that and make me do it a way that's unfair, I'd rather walk away.
Well, I mean, for the most part, I'm really glad you answered that question. And the reason I'm really glad is because I see a lot of hopelessness when people think about the system, right? From the perspective of an incarcerated person, right? And what happens is once that hopelessness sets in, it's kind of like, why am I doing this? Like I'm doing all of these things to make myself better, but people don't see it, right? And so the fact that you get to come into places like this and kind of just amalgamate and kind of just sit with us and talk to us, what it does is it brings that hope back. When people see this interview, they'll say, man, you know, like, okay, it humanizes. And I hate to use that word because there's always this line, the us and them line, right? And so people get to see the human side of you like, wow, okay, she grew up like me. Okay, maybe I am taking this a little far, or maybe it's not true what they say. So I really appreciate that. So speaking of equality, I wanted to ask you about the Racial Justice Act. How is your office preparing to deal with the influx of probably petitions for the Racial Justice Act?
Yeah, so we've already been dealing with the Racial Justice Act as it relates to our open cases. And so having to dig through data to prove to the court that our charging, et cetera, is fair. Understanding now, I've been briefed a number of times on the fact that now it's going to be retroactive, and folks who are already inside are going to be able to petition to have their cases reviewed under the Racial Justice Act as well. And so that is going to require a lot of work within my office, a lot of work from our data team, a team of lawyers who will have to look back through these cases and through charging sort of decisions that have been made over the course of a number of years. And that's what we will have to do. Right. It's a part of our obligation, and we will live up to that obligation to make sure that if there is an instance where it is demonstrated that somebody was not treated fairly in the way that they were charged or sentenced, that we will do what we should do.
So can you talk about what your office is doing to build that trust gap that exists between you and maybe the constituents of San Francisco?
Yeah, that's an ongoing effort since day one. I think it's one thing that I understand very, very dearly and personally is that the Black community especially, but even the Latino community, we don't trust law enforcement for various valid reasons.
Right.
I didn't grow up being pro-police, wanting to be a prosecutor.
What?
That's not the way that went down.
No.
You know, and so I understand inherently what that distrust is. And so a part of my job is to make sure, one, that I help to rebuild some of that trust, But not only is that through me and my staff going into community, but it's the way we do the work. It's
Right.
fundamentally the way we do the work. Because if I can talk all day, but if that's not reflected in how we do this work, then none of it's going to matter. It's empty words. Because at the end of the day, most of our victims come from those communities. Nobody talks about that. They only talk about perpetrators of crime coming from certain communities. They never talk about victims. And when you really layer that back, it's because of stereotypes. It all comes back to stereotypes. They only want us to be seen as criminals.
Right.
Nobody ever wants to see us as victims. Well, we've been victims since we set foot on this
Yeah.
land
That's
hundreds
very
of
true.
years ago.
Yeah.
And so a lot of what I do is to go out and make myself available, whether you have been a victim, whether you have a son that's facing a case right now. I want you to feel heard. I want you to be seen. I want you to have impact on the way that we do the work. And it's not just me. I don't want to take all the credit for that. We have staff that has consistently made themselves available and been in community as well.
Right.
And I have leadership in my office that is committed to that because they understand the need for us to build that trust. And also, like I said, there's a lot we have to learn from community about things that have caused, right, the damage over the decades.
Right. I gotta ask you this. There's this perception that your office does not prosecute officers or security guards, and they've shot and killed unarmed people. How do you respond to that?
So, first I want to separate those two categories
Yes.
because I don't see them as the same.
Yes.
But let me start with the cops. So, the only reason I believe that that's being said about me is because I dismissed cases that Chase Aboudin filed. Because none of these other DAs have filed any cases that I've seen. Certainly not that have been prosecuted successfully. Those cases were dismissed because they had specific issues with evidence and with ethics. Those were cases that had existed under multiple previous DAs. I think all of those incidents happened under the Gascon administration. He did not file those cases. And for years, some of them. And so I think it was clear then that he didn't believe there was enough evidence to file charges against those cops. In one of them, his office had written a full-on letter or a report as to why they weren't going to file charges. That was disregarded, and I believe because Chesa ran on a platform that he would prosecute cops, and he had to deliver on that. And he thought that that would be enough to keep the people, especially once the recall started.
Right.
I fundamentally believe in police accountability. They know that. I've said, you cross that line, and then I have a job to do. And there's been plenty of officer-involved shootings that across the country that I've been in an uproar about for many years now. You know, it was just the anniversary of Oscar Grant's death
Right.
a couple of days ago. That will forever bother me. I was on the BART train that night. It got stopped after that shooting. He did not deserve to die. And that officer basically got away with no penalty for it. I don't count a couple of years. And so I fundamentally believe in police accountability, but I'm gonna do it the right way. I'm not gonna play games because somebody's a cop and use that for my political gain. If you cross the line and I have the evidence to prove it, just like any other person, you'll get charged. The security guard, I don't see them as a cop. You know, most of the security guards that I see in San Francisco are black men. Just trying to make it. Some of them, a lot of them, have records. That's the one job they can get.
Right.
That they feel like that can help them take care of their family. I'm not going to equate them to a police officer. They don't have the training of a police officer. They don't think they're a police officer. I could not prove that case. That case has been with the Attorney General's office for 6 months plus now. Has he filed that case?
Yeah.
I think that tells us a lot. If it was chargeable, it would be charged by now.
Yeah.
I don't make political decisions. I only lost off not charging that case, right? People got upset at me. I could have been like, charge it. Quiet them down. Just charge the case and let it do what it does.
Right.
That's not who I am. I said day one, almost 10 years ago, I will only do this job the way I believe it should be done, and that's the right way. If it means people don't want to vote for me, I can rest with that, because I'll go to bed knowing I didn't make these decisions based on what was best for Brooke. I made these decisions based on what was fair under the law. That's how I sleep at night. And so, no, you weren't going to see me use that black man's life to benefit me, because everybody left out that security guard was a young black man from Oakland who actually had a family member be murdered not long before that as well.
Right.
Just trying to make it. Formerly homeless.
Wow.
And I was supposed to rest on his back without the proof to benefit me? No, won't do it. And I'm okay with that.
That is refreshing. I would have to tell you, it's refreshing to know that that type of integrity exists in the system still, right? So, all right, in closing, the incarcerated population holds the swing votes. It's an election tomorrow. What do you say to the incarcerated population?
That you have a DA that believes fundamentally in fairness and in having a system that works. Having a system that says, right, we have to live in a society where we treat each other with respect, where we respect rules and boundaries, but that if somebody messes up, I'm a person that understands how to look at a situation and figure out what the fair form of accountability is. Some people get a second or even a third or fourth chance. Some people we have to figure out, well, where are we at now in that line to draw? But who believes in taking it case by case basis, person by person basis. Most people wouldn't think this, but I'm gonna tell you one more thing about me and why it didn't take a symposium here at San Quentin to sell me on the fact that people behind these walls can reform themselves. When I was a corporate lawyer, we used to do a lot of pro bono work. And I ended up working on a civil rights case for some men incarcerated at Georgia State Prison. They had been assaulted by guards, by COs there. And so we filed a civil suit on their behalf to get compensated for their injuries. Four of the 6 clients had been convicted of murder, very young. The other 2 for attempted murder. Some of the nicest, most respectful men I've ever met. I knew then people can change. I knew then that you might see a conviction for something, right, for a 187 and have a certain thought process, but when you walk in and you meet the person, they're not at all what you thought. And so I fundamentally know that, having worked alongside these men for all those months to try to make sure that they got compensated for what happened. And I was 26 years old at that time, young lawyer. It didn't take me being a prosecutor to figure that out. And so I've carried that with me this whole journey, that people can change. What do we need to do to get them there? And how can we make this system better, not just where I'm at, but even behind the walls, right? To ensure that when people get out, they're equipped to succeed.
First of all, thank you for coming. I respect and I appreciate, and this definitely changed my perspective a little bit. Like, I wasn't all the way across on the other side of the fence, but now I'm sold as to your dedication and commitment to what you do, right? And for the people, right? And the safety of San Francisco, right? And so I have to say that from a lens of someone who has been incarcerated for a violent crime for a while, and being in here with the people that I am, you kind of get to see who's ready and who's not, and what percentage of it. And so I know your job is hard. And so I just want to say, I wouldn't want your job, but I do feel like the integrity that comes with the office now is in a good place, if that means anything, coming from me, right? And so I would like to give you this opportunity to address anything that you feel like you want to say.
Well, one, I appreciate that. The main thing, like I said, that I've always wanted, even as a line prosecutor, is for people to believe that we can achieve fairness in our system. The other thing is, I want folks in here in particular to understand, we committed to coming quarterly to San Quentin to do these symposiums that we're going to do, like we're going to do today. And that's not for show, right? We have plenty of work to do, don't need any type of show. We do it, and we're going to do it, because I fundamentally believe there's a lot we can learn from the men inside these walls. One of what we need to do to fix the things that continue to be broken in our system. When I was here the last time, just hearing the disparity in sentencing alone for certain crimes across counties stood out to me. I mean, I couldn't even focus for a little while at how much that stood out to me. But the other thing is, intervention and prevention work is fundamental to me. And who better to ask than the folks inside who can tell us what might have worked for you when you were a kid, when you were 14, when you were 17, when you were 20. What might have gotten through to you? Because if we can take it from you and bring it to the outside, then everybody's better off. If, as you guys start to get released, if we can have you come and work with us to try to help our youth, to craft programs even for those who have been convicted of certain types of crime, curriculum that they have to take to better themselves, then we're all better off. But the other thing I wanted to accomplish, because like I said, I knew it from having done that civil rights case years ago, is I want my prosecutors to come in here and to firsthand see what rehabilitation looks like.
Yeah.
They have to understand and feel it and see it. Because otherwise, it's easy for them, right, to have hard hearts. Their hearts to grow hard and to say, no, you've done X, you gotta be locked up. Oh, you can't ever be fixed. No, I want them to see, it doesn't matter what you've done. People can change, people can grow. And we have to be open to understanding that, because that's the only thing that helps make sure that when we resolve a case right at the end, that justice is proportional and that is fair, right? And so that's the main thing I want people to know is I'm not coming into this trying to be the anti-Chesa. I don't have anything against Chesa, but I know that people feel like something was taken away from them, right? That they had this opportunity that's now been taken.
So does that opportunity still exist?
The opportunities still exist.
Right.
What I've promised is that it's going to be done responsibly. It's not going to just be this rhetoric that comes out and sounds good to some people. Because we know some people have grown, some people haven't. We got to make sure it's the people that have grown who we send back out. And so that's all. I just want it to be done responsibly.
I appreciate you, and it's been a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you for coming. This is Rhashiyd Zinnamon and Brooke Jenkins signing out for The Pulse.